Hey, what's up guys, Solidubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Samsung N650. Now, if the name is somewhat familiar, that's probably because you've heard of the Samsung MS650. If that still doesn't ring a bell, well, just check out some of the best soundbars you can find in the UK right now. Now, the N650 is a little bit different for two reasons. One, it has a subwoofer included, and I know that's not something hugely different from a lot of soundbars that you can find right now, but this is the very first soundbar from Samsung that has the acoustic beam technology. Let's call it ABT for just to keep it short. Now, the ABT technology works somewhat like Dolby Atmos. It has upward firing, not upward firing, but it has grills at the top of the soundbar, which mean that the sound diverts itself not only from the front but also from the top, and therefore aims to bounce around your room and then basically create a sort of a 360 surround sound. Now, that type of thing is great in principle, but I was very much intrigued to see how that would actually work in practice. Now, I am someone who loves having a surround sound. I have a 5.1 sound system at my desk. I have a 5.1 sound system also in my living room via some old Teufel speakers. And again, I was just very much intrigued to see how this would compare also to Dolby Atmos grade soundbar systems. So first, let's talk about the specs. Now, in terms of the soundbar, it has a 5.1 channel. It has 360 watts of total power. It has 8 speakers, or shall I say 8 drivers, each of which also have their own dedicated amplifier. This does not have the distortion cancelling technology that the MS650 has, so the N650 doesn't have it. It doesn't have DTX and DTSX, shall I say, and in terms of Dolby Digital, it has Dolby 5.1 channel. Other than that, in terms of support, it has a HDMI pass-through, it has optical, it has a 3.5mm jack, and also has Bluetooth, which you can connect up via your smartphone or, let's say, your TV as well. In terms of the subwoofer, it's wirelessly connected up to the soundbar, which means you don't have to bother about any extra wires to go there. In terms of any sort of delay, in case you're wondering, I had no sort of delays no matter where I placed the subwoofer. The fact that it's wireless is also quite good. It means that it's quite mobile, so you can move it from the left to the right, behind you, wherever you want to have it. Now, the design of the soundbar is actually really nice. It's got a full mesh black finish, and it also comes with a nice little remote control. The remote control is pretty familiar if you've got a Samsung TV or another soundbar, but it has full controls of the soundbar, which are illuminated on the right hand side via a small little display. In fact, let me just take you up close to the display so you guys can see this. So through the little display, you'll be able to see the volume being changed, so different levels of volume. But then most importantly, you've got the sound mode button. The sound mode button will go via standard, which is for music, surround, which is, as the name suggests, and game, which is optimized for game content. Now, interestingly enough, these sound modes will be automatically picked up via the metadata transferred to the soundbar, and therefore give you the best experience, or what the soundbar thinks is the best experience. Of course, if you so wish, just customize it through here, which in my opinion I would suggest. Via the settings menu, you can also adjust the treble, the bass, and the audio delay of the soundbar. Other than that, you've got pairing mode, you can change the input as well, play and pause, which is always useful for Bluetooth connectivity. Then you've got a volume up and down and a woofer volume up and down as well. Now, in terms of the soundbar's functionalities, the build quality and the design, I've got absolutely no complaints. I like the fact the Samsung have kept the one remote design, and also the fact that the inputs and outputs that the soundbar has, plus the looks and design, are actually really slender. You can see the full specs and the sort of dimensions on the website, but I was actually very impressed to see how well it does. Now, one thing with the MS650 versus the N650, which we've got in front of us, was the fact that it didn't have a subwoofer. And a subwoofer meant that you didn't have those low-end tones. In this case, however, you do have some nice punchy mid-bass and a nice sub-bass extension. In order to replicate this and in order to bring it to you guys into life, I'm going to go to the NCS channel, which I'll be sure to link down in the description below, the exact song. There's Cartoon On and On. So as you're probably able to hear right there, you had a nice sort of punchy sound whilst the vocals were going on. However, one thing I did notice versus the MS650 is it doesn't have the distortion-free technology. Now, the distortion technology that was implemented with the MS650 is not present here. Now, what does that mean? Well, in all honesty, from my test, I didn't really notice that much of a difference. The soundbar and the subwoofer have both very good control in the mid-bass tones, and a sub-bass extension is very much present. Something that the N650 has over its other sibling, the MS650. However, that still has its strength, but then also there's a few weaknesses the N650 has. The mid-range, even though it is very accurate, was a little bit recessed. So when it came to listening to vocals, as you might have heard just there, the vocals didn't come out as much. Yet the bass and the highs were very much present. So therefore I had more like a V-shaped sound signature listening to the N650. More warm sounding, fun sounding, great for gaming and whatnot, but maybe not as accustomed for people who are audiophiles, potentially like myself, and also people that so if they're listening to classical music, want the best mid-range reproduction, or jazz music for example, with some nice vocals in the background. So that is pretty much the weakness of the N650. Its mid-range is a little bit recessed. However, the highs extend really well, there's a great sparkle at the top end, and there's a great sort of extension too. However, the biggest standout feature here is its soundstage. Now, as you're able to hear potentially in that little short clip, and I'll go into it in just a little bit while, but just a bit now, but the difference is you've got that little surround sound button. Now, that surround sound button really brings out the sound all around you and makes you a bit more, makes you feel more involved into what you're watching on your screen. So in my case, on my monitor, let's just press play. I'm going to switch to surround. And back to standard. So I'm not sure if you're able to hear that or if the camera's able to pick it up, but there's less of a surround sound on the standard mode, which is a music mode, but therefore is a little bit more direct. So if you're listening to music, standard mode is quite nice. If, however, you're listening to games or you're watching a nice movie, then I would suggest putting a surround sound mode. Here you get a more sort of a 3D sound, and pretty much what the ABT technology really intends to do is bring you closer to what you're watching. In all honesty, I must say the N650 does a fantastic job. In terms of the overall sound frequency, the bass is nice and punchy, maybe a little bit overpowering at times, and maybe a little bit uncontrolled on the mid-bass tones. The mids are accurate but a little bit recessed, and the highs have got a nice little sparkle at top end. And the soundstage is fantastic, it's great instrument separation, and you've got a nice width and depth to it, especially with the ABT technology implemented too. Which basically means this soundbar and subwoofer system, I would say, is a good sound system. It's not perfect, to say the least. However, in comparison to what you find out there in the market right now, I would definitely suggest it. If you gave me the same amount of money and you told me to buy a Sonos Playbar, for example, I would say you're crazy. Get this instead. So that's pretty much it. If you want a nice 3D sounding sound system in like a nice little enclosure with a subwoofer, then the N650 is a fantastic choice. If, however, you want something that has distortion-free technology, has all the similar sort of features but doesn't have a subwoofer, then the MS650 from Samsung is a great value option right now. For 400 quid, I can't really say there's any better soundbar out there right now that competes with it. So there we go, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review. I did pick out a few flaws, but let me know in the comments below what you think the flaws are of this soundbar and sound system. And make sure you check out that sound clip in the description below. So shout out to NCS for all their awesome sounds. And that's about it, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. Make sure you give it a like, comment as I said before, subscribe, and favorite and share, as it always helps the channel grow. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed, and bye bye.